Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Pagan Problems and Insta World. So, instant gratification, instant results, Instagram, Insta. The idea that things should be as instantaneous as possible and require the least amount of effort has produced troubling results in all segments of society, and it is an absolute toxin in pagan spirituality and witchcraft. Ever since my studies began, I've encountered an increasing number of people each year via social media who just don't care to put the work in. They are not striving to become anything. Instead, they have a preoccupation with meaningless titles and categories, and they have a lack of study and a lack of application. There are people who are seeking to know what kind of pagan/witch I am before they have any conception of what those words mean and what spiritual paths even consist of. Proudly, there will be newcomers who announce to the room all of the various forms of psychic gifts that they lay claim to. The term empath is particularly fashionable at the moment. And then they recoil when anyone dares point out that in pagan circles, and especially in witchcraft circles, such capabilities are normal and to be expected. In other words, that isn't going to be the thing that makes you stand out and be special. And those who haven't done their homework, they genuinely cannot tell the difference between pagan philosophy and the New Age memes that they come across all over the internet. And they insist on treating their memes as equally valid opinions as the lore that we've inherited from our ancestors. And they often put forth that their memes and their opinions and their preferences should override everything else that has ever come before it. There can be no correction of these ideas. They wouldn't dream of listening to their elders or to anyone who's been walking the path 5 minutes longer than they have. They're not going to read. They're not going to really study. They're not going to put anything into practice. They're not going to go through the trial and error process, and they're not going to learn from mistakes. And certainly, there are to be no suggestions made that finding your place in paganism is going to involve more than a box-ticking exercise based on random internet articles of dubious reasoning that can be over and done with in 5 minutes. Another difficulty that results from this allergy to work and an unwillingness to lift a finger is that people who are in this unhealthy mindset will join various pagan groups and treat other members as if they're supposed to be living encyclopedias who ought to be ready to answer any and all questions at a moment's notice. And on top of that, they aren't actually interested in a line of reasoning. They just want to be told what they want to hear, which will be an answer that is simple, easy, and doesn't require further thought or action. This is an unfortunate pattern, which repeats in most online pagan communities, and it makes the task of networking, forging friendships, and building something worthwhile much more difficult. When people are concerned with getting these instant results, instead of getting acquainted, building relationships, not only do they not become spiritually enlightened, they are also tearing down the efforts of people who have less narcissistic intentions. I mean, there's a world of difference between someone who comes into the room and says, I'd like an answer of this question without so much as saying a hello, and someone says, oh, hi, how you doing? Oh, good to see you. Oh, how'd that thing that you were doing turn out? By the way, I was reading about this, and I kind of got stuck on this in my brain, and I wanted to see what someone else thought about it and kind of help me reason through this. You see the differences in those approaches? One is just this demanding entitlement, and the other is actually someone who's connecting with other beings. But this contrast, it isn't merely a question of poor social skills or lacking in good manners or feeling ill at ease amongst new people and not acting quite right. When people take the humanity out of it, it is to treat them as if they were avatars of artificial intelligence. They're just an interface unit. They exist only to provide information upon demand. Spiritual laziness is a serious problem. I mean, it's all well and good for people to talk about their path. But what is the function of a path? A path is a walkway upon which one can travel from place to place. And if someone is stagnating, then they aren't walking that path. If someone hasn't stepped a toe on the path, then they aren't walking that path. They aren't making progress. They aren't learning. And learning about pagan spirituality is not just an intellectual exercise or something that can be done in a completely passive manner. It requires initiative and committing the time and the brain power to do this. And then it's about application and allowing your life to change. And that change is necessary because most of us were not raised in pagan households, and we certainly weren't raised in pagan societies. So we're having to go through a process of integration, and ultimately that results in a metamorphosis if we stick with it. But change does not occur without effort, and it doesn't occur overnight. And this is where the drive towards instant gratification in the broader culture is so detrimental to pagan spirituality, because it's just not the way that it works. Now, that's not to say that there aren't moments when things click. There are. And it doesn't mean that there aren't times when something does come easily, because there are those moments. But the vast majority of the time, this is a slow, step-by-step process, and it's not necessarily easy. But going through this is what lays the groundwork for the moments when things do come together. But that doesn't happen without previously putting in the time and the work. And I really see a need for there to be a renaissance and an appreciation for the process of things, of seeing the value of evolution over time and allowing things to grow as they should in their own season. And taking that approach requires some mental rewiring, and perhaps it would help if we learn to re-embrace performing labor in our mundane lives as well, whether that's cooking from scratch instead of just tossing something in the microwave, or gardening and canning instead of just popping out to the grocery store, taking up hobbies that require patience and instead of just going out to some store, seeing something pretty, buying it, and bringing it home without having to do anything to create it ourselves. We need to challenge ourselves intellectually, perhaps by reading classic literature, listening to classical music, studying fine art, and perhaps going a step further and actually attempting to do creative writing, or learning how to play an instrument, or attempting to draw and paint. If we work towards becoming more hands-on in our lives and cultivating in our minds, that we may find it more natural to put forth as much effort into spiritual pursuits and to stop expecting to attain mastery and recognition in an instant. And it all begins with rejecting the idea that instant gratification is preferable or even possible. We could do a lot worse than to examine how things have turned out in our society for those who have embraced this Insta world. Are these people any happier? Are they more fulfilled, or do they exist without any noticeable sense of purpose? Do they tend to be lost, lacking the energy to make real progress, and have only a vague outlook on life in general? What do these people have to show for their choices? Have they built or do they possess anything of value that's going to last over the long term? Or are they always having to recreate themselves, to move around or replace things because it just isn't serviceable anymore? And what is the state of their relationships? How long do their romantic entanglements last, and on what terms? Do they experience true intimacy, or is it just ships passing in the night? Do they have love, or just lust and infatuation? The proof is in the pudding, and the results of our Insta world are easily recognizable. And as pagans, I think the time has come for us to lead the way, to shine the light on a way of doing things that requires effort, that it takes time to come to fruition, and that it ultimately has the strength to last. So those are my thoughts. Time to share yours with me, either in the comment section below or click on the link in the description box. It'll take you to our Gilded server. It's called Blackbird's Brew. I'd be very happy to continue the conversation with you there, and that would also give you an opportunity to meet other members of the group. So I hope to see you soon, but for right now, that'll do it, and I will see you next time. Bye.